The 1980 NLCS was the greatest baseball postseason series of all time. I can say that without any doubts at all. This series was epic from start to finish. And there are so many storylines that'll make your head spin.
It's a fair ball down the line. Pujols with his sore foot, hammering around third. Here's the throw. Pujols coming to the plate, and he slides. He is out.
Well, to understand all of this, though, we're going to have to go all the way back to the beginning, and we're going to have to look closely to see how the story developed. You see, a lot of people who talk about this series forget about all of the context in the background. So in the mid-1970s, the Cincinnati Reds had a major dynasty.
Evans tracks it down. Bench will take two. Double. Tying run at second base. Nobody out.
However, by the late 1970s, that dynasty showed signs of fading. Now, the most visible member of the Reds was this man, Pete Rose. In 1978, Rose attracted a lot of media attention as he challenged Joe DiMaggio's famous 56-game hitting streak. It got to the point where major networks would cut into other games just to show Rose's at-bats. Rose's streak that season lasted 44 games before it was finally broken.
Hard hit ball, past the second baseman Gilbert, and Pete Rose has done it.
And if you were a casual baseball fan, you would naturally think that Rose was the Reds' best player. And that makes what comes next even more difficult to understand. In 1977, the two-time world champion Reds finished 10 games behind the Dodgers. And in 1978, Rose's famous hitting streak didn't help that much as the Reds finished in second place again, 2.5 games behind the Dodgers. And so on November 28, 1978, the Cincinnati Reds decided to fire manager Sparky Anderson. The firing came despite Sparky's 2 world titles, 4 pennants, and 2 consecutive second-place finishes. And it also came when Pete Rose was a free agent and was receiving offers from numerous teams. Now, Pete Rose was 37 years old in 1978, so anybody who's playing OOTP or Baseball Mogul or any game that's like that would probably let him go instead of paying him that free agent money. But you've got to remember that Pete was basically the face of the Cincinnati Reds by this point, especially after his hitting streak. Most of the Reds fans saw Pete leaving as a huge tragedy. Just a week later, Rose decided to sign with the Philadelphia Phillies, a decision that was front-page news. More traditional fans complained about the woes of free agency. Meanwhile, it turned out that WPHL-TV in Philadelphia was footing part of Rose's salary, figuring that ratings for Phillies games were about to go up. The deal was for $600,000 a year for 3 years from the TV station, kind of a big gamble on a player who was about to turn 38. And to Pete's credit, he really rewarded the Phillies with a surprisingly good season for a player that was that old. Rose hit .331 and led the National League with a .418 on-base percentage. He also played in every single game in 1979, which will never cease to amaze me. And once again, Rose was making headlines. Though the Phillies dropped to 4th in 1979, they still looked like a team with quite a bit of promise. Well, meanwhile, down in Houston, the Astros were making some really big free agent signings. The Houston Astros spent most of 1979 in first place, though they started to falter near the end of the season. They found themselves neck and neck at the end of the season with none other than the Cincinnati Reds. In the end, the Reds managed to win the division, but it was extremely close. And so the Astros did what the Phillies did the year before. They decided to enter the free agent market. Wouldn't it be nice these years if you had teams in small markets that would do the same things? Anyway, the Astros came up with one of the biggest finds that you can imagine. Nolan Ryan was well known as a strikeout pitcher by this time, though he could be really wild. In fact, Ryan started the All-Star game for the American League in 1979, and he started it out in classic Nolan Ryan fashion by collecting a strikeout on a fastball. Ryan also repeated that feat in the first game of the American League Championship Series. But Angels general manager Buzzy Bavasi was famously concerned that Ryan's record was only 16-14 despite the amazing fastball. And so, a few weeks after the Angels lost the championship series, Ryan announced his intention to become a free agent. Nolan was generally seen as the top prize in the free agent market that year. Now, hindsight is 20/20, of course, but you have to realize that for the Astros then, Nolan Ryan was far from a sure deal. He was turning 33 in 1980. He was wild. He had led the American League in walks 6 out of the last 8 years, and actually would lead the National League in walks in 1980. Sure, he had that ability to strike out over 300 men a season, but his wildness and his age were definitely major question marks at the time. Despite the doubts, though, it was front-page news when Ryan decided to sign with the Astros and go back home. Nolan Ryan signed a contract good for $1 million a year, which was the biggest contract in American sports at that time. And, of course, the papers made sure to note Ryan's 4 no-hitters at the time, which was tied with Sandy Koufax for the most by a single pitcher. And the Astros had one more big splash to make. At the end of January 1980, the Astros decided to go in for Joe Morgan. Morgan, of course, started his career out with the Astros in the early 1960s. He was underappreciated in his time there, however, mostly because the Astrodome was such an extreme pitcher's park. Morgan's salary was a little over $225,000, and his signing was expected to make the Astros the team to beat in the National League. So I should add here that Joe Morgan was 36 years old and he wasn't getting any younger. And unlike Pete Rose, he wasn't going to play for you every single day. Now, the real funny thing about the Astros team is that Nolan Ryan wasn't actually the ace of the Astros staff when the 1980 season started. That spot still went to this man, J.R. Richard, who was just as much a strikeout artist as Ryan. Though Nolan Ryan was more famous, the truth is that J.R. Richard was probably the better pitcher at the time. Despite his great pitching ability, Richard unfortunately didn't get much attention nationally. But in retrospect, it feels unfair for the same team to have the 2 strikeout leaders in the same rotation. But unfortunately, J.R. Richard's 1980 season didn't last very long. Richard's problem started when he left a start on July 14th in the 4th inning, saying that he felt sick. The Astros lost that game and were only a half game ahead of the Dodgers. 2 weeks later, Richard collapsed on the field from a stroke when he tried to pitch again. Though an emergency surgery saved his life, Richard was done for the 1980 season, and J.R. Richard never pitched in a Major League Baseball game again. Despite all the drama, though, the Astros still managed to maintain a slim lead over the Dodgers. Now, the 1980 National League pennant races were some of the closest of all time, and the late-season drama that year was like nothing we would experience today. Baseball's expanded postseason has taken a lot of the magic away from the regular season. This becomes obvious when you take a real close look back. Surprisingly, Nolan Ryan hit a 3-run home run in his first start for the Astros, something I don't think anyone expected. Now, NBC covered that game as the game of the week, but the Astros wound up losing to the Dodgers in 17 innings in what was the longest nationally televised baseball game up to that time. So that gives you an idea of just how evenly matched the Astros and the Dodgers were even at the beginning of the season, and it was like that all season long. This 3.5 game lead on July 28th was the largest the Astros were able to get all season. And of course, it came after a 10th inning win against none other than the Philadelphia Phillies. On August 15th, the Astros managed to preserve a tie for first with the Dodgers after a 20-inning win in San Diego. On the 23rd, the Astros beat the Cubs 1-0 in 17 innings. Pitcher Joe Niekro was forced to hit for himself in that game because the Astros had used the entire bullpen and he hit a double to drive in the only run. And on September 10th, the 12th inning home run by Jose Cruz gave the Astros a tie with the Dodgers for first place. Now you need to understand that back in those days, the schedule made more sense, at least in the National League. National League teams would play only against teams within their own division for the last month of the season, and that meant that Houston and Los Angeles were going to settle the issue on the field. When Vern Rules shut out the Reds on September 26th, the Astros established a 2-game lead over the Dodgers. Nolan Ryan kept the good times rolling with a win over the Braves on September 30th, a win that eliminated the Reds. And Houston won its final home regular season game, giving the Astros a 3-game lead over the Dodgers with only 3 to play. So the Astros' magic number by this time was 1. In other words, one more win and it was over. But they were playing in Los Angeles, which of course was never going to be easy. So Ken Force started for the Astros in the first game and he went the distance, but it wasn't pretty.
All right, here's Force for the windup and a pitch to Joe. Long fly ball, left
field. Away back, Cedeno at the warning track. Up in the air. Can't get it. Home run. Dodgers win.
Though the walk-off home run was a disappointment, the Astros still had 2 games to play and still only needed to win 1. And besides, the Astros had Nolan Ryan pitching the next afternoon. But Steve Garvey smacked this home run to give the Dodgers a 2-1 lead.
Nolan Ryan delivers, and Garvey hits that fastball over the wall in left field to give the Dodgers a 2-1 lead.
And the Dodgers managed to hold on to win, meaning that the final game of the season would be for all the marbles.
Bouncing ball to the right side. The rookie Jack Percani, fine stop over to Garvey to end it.
So I told you the old way of doing things was a lot more fun. You know, the playoffs that we have today really are an artificial substitute for the excitement of the old pennant races. Sure, you didn't get a race like this one every single season, but man, it was worth it when you did. At first, it looked like the Dodgers would fumble everything away on the last game of the season. With this double by Terry Poole, the Astros went up 3-0 early.
To left center field, might be trouble. Baker racing over, can't get it. That will make it 3-0.
But the Dodgers started to come back.
Drill to center. Base hit Cedeno.
This single cut the lead down to 3-2 in the bottom of the 7th.
It's hit to right field. It's a base hit. It will score 1 run, and Ferguson will be held at third as the throw is not cut.
And Ron Say's home run in the bottom of the 8th turned it into a 4-3 lead for the Dodgers.
Deep left center field. Back goes Cedeno. Gone.
The Astros had 2 on with 2 out in the top of the 9th, but they couldn't get that last hit.
Lopes gathers it in. We'll see you tomorrow.
And all of that forced game number 163. This is that rare situation where the regular season wasn't quite enough to separate the 2 teams. The Dodgers started Dave Goltz in that must-win game, which in hindsight was probably a mistake. The Astros took advantage of sloppy fielding to score 2 runs in the first.
The Hatcher, the runner coming home. The throw to Ferguson. They do not get him as Joe drops the ball.
All right, how? So in hindsight, you've really got to wonder why the Astros didn't go to the bullpen once they worked up that big lead. And you'll see the reason why in a couple of minutes. Anyway, the Astros won the West by the skin of their teeth, but even that was nothing compared to what the Phillies went through in the National League East. The Phillies crawled out of the gates and were as many as 6 games behind on August 10th, and manager Dallas Green was livid. The Phillies showed that they meant it the next day, though, tying the ballgame before darkness fell on Wrigley Field. The Phillies won the suspended game in 15 innings when it was continued the next day, and won the second game after that, and the season started to turn around. And this 17-inning win at home against the Padres a week later showed that the Phillies really meant business. So on paper, you would think that the 1980 Phillies would have been a great team. I mean, Mike Schmidt was the league MVP that year. Greg Luzinski was a modern-style power hitter, a lot of strikeouts, but a lot of good slugging. Pete Rose had a reasonable on-base percentage for a guy who was 38. And there was also Steve Carlton, who was the ace of the staff. But it took Dallas Green getting really angry to wake these guys up and get the ball rolling. The Phillies were only a half game behind Montreal when they beat the Pirates on September 9th on a suicide squeeze bunt in the 14th inning. But no matter how dramatic the Phillies' wins were, they simply couldn't seem to squeeze past the Expos. Even with a late September chance to tie the Expos at home, the Phillies managed to blow it.
Ball is hit high in the air and deep to left, and it is gone. Home run for Carter.
This decisive 8-3 victory in the rubber game of the series gave the Expos a half-game lead with only 2 series left to play. You see, I told you it was more interesting with the older schedule, and the end of this race was just totally crazy. The Phillies outlasted the Cubs 6-5 in 15 innings to keep pace with the Expos. And all in all, the Phillies were able to sweep 4 straight from the Cubs, leading to a tie with the Expos with only 3 games left to go. And since they were tied with only 3 games left to go, there was unfortunately no chance for the 163rd game. That's just how the math worked out. The final games were basically a 3-game series for the pennant. The first game of the series in Montreal was an all-time classic.
Here's the 2-0 pitch. Fastball, long drive. Watch that, baby. Way out of here, home run. Michael Jack Smith has just tied Eddie Matthews' record for all-time homers by a third baseman in the season, number 47.
The Phillies needed only 1 more win to clinch the division. And that brings us to the next to the last game of the season, a game that I swear is one of the greatest regular season games in baseball history. This game was delayed for more than 3 hours because of rain. The wet turf and the fatigue made it look like the Phillies were going to give it away in the first inning. But then they somehow came up with crazy plays like this one.
Nice grab, Manny Trio holds Scott, throws out off of Scott trying to score, and he is out at home plate. Scott never got the play.
Through some sort of miracle, the Phillies were able to prevent the Expos from scoring early.
If the short might be a double play, Trio one, relay yes, get the double play and get out of the inning.
And then the rain started to fall again.
Beginning to rain out here.
So I guess they could have called this game and played a doubleheader the next day, but they weren't about to do that. Now the funny thing is that this game was originally supposed to be the NBC Game of the Week, but they decided against using it as the Game of the Week after the 3-hour delay. Anyway, the Phillies blew an early chance to take the lead as Bake McBride was called out trying to score with 2 men out.
Off the top of the fence, Bake McBride being waved around. Spire has a great gun and he'll be out by 10 feet.
It started to fall apart when Larry Christensen threw away this pickoff attempt at first.
Oh, Christensen throws it away and Rogers is going to end up at third base. So the Phillies.
And then Jerry White made it academic, putting the Expos up 2-0.
That's hit well to right field, out of here, home run, Jerry White.
But Pete Rose, who had been quiet that summer, started to come alive at the right time. Now the Expos had Steve Rogers on the mound. Rogers finished 5th in the Cy Young Award voting that year. He had a 2.98 ERA, and he really was the ace of the staff for Montreal. But the Phillies had this strange ability to wear out great pitchers with singles late in ball games. With 1 out in the top of the 7th, Pete Rose got this clutch single on the first pitch. Bake McBride then got a single of his own, also on the first pitch.
Base hit. Rose will stop at second.
And then Mike Schmidt followed that up with a base hit of his own, which was followed by some of the most bizarre base running I've ever seen.
Base hit, left field. Rose is being held. Oh, McBride is held up and they're going to get him in a rundown, or are they? He is safe.
Luzinski then singled home 2 runs with a 3-0 count on him.
Green light, base hit, center field. The Phillies are going to go ahead. Now they got Schmidt in a rundown, 2-run score. Schmidt's in a rundown, still in a rundown. And they get Schmidt, and now they're trying
Schmidt was out on the rundown, and then Luzinski was thrown out as well, trying to get to second. So I told you this was one of the greatest games I've ever seen. Now the Phillies were up 3-2 now despite that base running, but there still was a lot of baseball left to play.
Pop-up. Manny Trio right there.
An otherwise innocent pop-up to second base by Chris Spire turned into an error, and now things were really starting to happen. Ron LaFleur, a player whose story is simply fascinating, came in to run for Spire, which was kind of like having Ricky Henderson come in as a pitch runner. Everybody in the Western Hemisphere knew that LaFleur was going to try to steal second, but the Phillies still threw it away, and the tying run was now on at third. A walk put Tim Raines on at first as a pinch runner, still with 2 men out. Raines stole second base without as much as a throw from the Phillies, who were still having defensive problems. Jerry White then hit a sacrifice fly to tie the ball game.
That's hit deep enough to score the tying run. Uncher's back there. And we're tied up at 3.
And then Rodney Scott hit this huge double to put the Expos up 4-3. So have you ever noticed that nobody really talks about the 1980 Expos? I mean, this was a great team with tremendous speed, great players, Andre Dawson, Gary Carter, and so on. But we tend to pay a lot more attention to the 1994 team, the team where it's like what might have been. Somebody really needs to do an in-depth look at the 1980 Expos one of these days. Down by 1 in the top of the 9th, Pete Rose managed to work a 4-pitch walk off of closer Woody Fryman. Later that same inning, with Bake McBride on first and 1 man out, Mike Schmidt was called out at first on this extremely controversial play. But then, with 2 men out and the pennant on the line, Bob Boone hit this single to tie up the ball game and send us into extra innings.
Center field, Bake McBride rounding third. He stumbles, but he's still going to score. Boone heading for second base. Tie ball game.
In the top of the 11th, Pete Rose started yet another rally with this base hit.
Base hit, Pete Rose, his third hit of the ball game.
Not long afterwards, Mike Schmidt hit this incredible home run to put the Phillies up 6-4.
Way out of here. Home run. Mike Schmidt. Phillies
And the Phillies were able to shut down the Expos in the bottom of the 11th to win it.
struck him out. Phillies are the National League Eastern Division champions.
So I told you that this was one of the best regular season games ever, and actually I skipped over a whole lot of stuff just so we could, get through it. All of this set the stage for the National League Championship Series, and if you thought all of that stuff before was dramatic, just wait. Game 1 was played in Philadelphia, and even with Steve Carlton on the mound, Phillies fans had reason to worry. You see, the last time the Phillies had won a home postseason game was October 8, 1915, Game 1 of the World Series that year. The winning pitcher that day was Grover Cleveland Alexander. The Phillies were 1 out away from winning Game 3 of the 1977 NLCS at home when Greg Luzinski misplayed this fly ball to left field.
Luzinski going away back, and this ball is trapped by Luzinski. It's a double for
And then the Phillies literally threw the game away.
1 out of 4. Throws the ball away at first base, and Davey Lopes moves up to second.
Philadelphia simply didn't recover from this loss and lost the series in 4 games.
Center field, and Davey Lopes is going to score, and the Dodgers have taken a 6-5 lead in the
And so you can imagine the pent-up frustration after decades and decades of not being able to put it away.
left field, way back, and gone.
The Philadelphia Phillies had never won a World Series. The Houston Astros, of course, had never been to the postseason, and they'd only been around since 1962. And so something had to give. It was a similar story to, like the Red Sox in 2004 or the Cubs in 2016. Because of all the strain put on the Astros rotation after the long ending to the regular season, Ken Forsch wound up being the starting pitcher in Game 1. However, the Astros wound up taking the lead early in that game, going up 1-0 on this Gary Woods third-inning single.
And pass trio and into right field of the Houston Astros will take the lead in the ball game 1-0.
Pete Rose did what he always did, eking out a single in the bottom of the third to try to come back.
Sharply, second baseman stops it, but Landeskog can't play it. Sure, there must be a reason.
But Rose then got himself thrown out on a hit-and-run play that apparently didn't work.
Great play by Reynolds. It looked like
So in retrospect, you've got to wonder why in the world Rose was running here. I mean, he wasn't out of shape, sure, but he was, 38, 39 years old? It goes to show you how much things have changed over time. But leading off the bottom of the 6th with a full count, Pete managed to do it again.
the hole. Reynolds backhand throws, and they can't get it.
And a few batters later, Greg Luzinski rocketed this ball to the left field stands for the only home run hit in the entire series, putting the Phillies up 2-1. Now, the key decision in the first game came in the top of the 7th when the Astros decided to let starting pitcher Ken Forsch hit for himself.
But he right now has a 1-run lead.
Forsch managed to get this base hit, which made it look like the right choice.
The alley going and is cut off nicely by Maddox. Gary got over to the story. Was with the Dodgers in '77, and Cabell played.
But then Forsch managed to get himself picked off first base when Rafael Landeskog failed to lay down a bunt. Now, in more recent years, this decision would have been obvious. You would just pinch hit for the pitcher. And of course, these days you've got the universal DH, so it doesn't even matter. But the real impact of that decision wasn't the fact that Forsch pitched a complete game in Game 1. It came later when the Astros were trying to figure out what to do with the bullpen. The Astros had the tying run at the plate in the bottom of the 9th with nobody out, trailing 3-1. But Tug McGraw got the ground ball, and the Phillies won the first game.
The ball is hit sharply. It's a trio. Manny has it. Throws to first. Phillies win.
It might not have looked like an all-time classic in the box score, but it was really dramatic. And this was the only game in this series that didn't go to extra innings, so buckle your seatbelts because it's going to be a bumpy ride from here on out. Nolan Ryan started for the Astros in Game 2, and since this was a 5-game series, this was the game that the Astros had to win. Ryan was pitching on 3 days rest, by the way, only the second time in 1980 that he pitched on such short rest. The first time was that October 5th game against the Dodgers when Steve Garvey beat him on this home run.
Delivers, and Garvey hits that wall in left field to give the Dodgers a 2-1 lead.
Ryan had his good stuff in Game 2, though.
2-2 with 2 out. Swing and a miss. So he blows the fastball.
Now, Game 2 of the 1980 NLCS is one of those games that will make you wish that they would have gotten rid of the designated hitter for once and for all instead of making it universal. Because if there was a DH in this game, it would have been nowhere near as much fun as it was. Craig Reynolds walked on 4 straight pitches by Dick Ruthven, and up came Nolan. Ryan made a good bunt, and Pete Rose got acquainted with him down the first base line.
Puts it down well over to Pete Rose, the first baseman, and Pete tags him out.
And then Terry Poole hit this one to Luzinski, who misplayed it, allowing the Astros to take a 1-0 lead.
To the left side, and Luzinski comes in, traps the ball. Reynolds turns, scores. Houston.
Now, the fun thing about watching baseball from this era is seeing how hitters, especially great hitters, dealt with pitchers like Nolan Ryan, you know, pitchers that really posed a problem. Look at Pete Rose choking up on the bat here, for example. You can see it really good from angles like this if you look closely. And Rose succeeded in the end, getting the first base hit for the Phillies.
That's a base hit. First one of the night for the Phillies.
Well, it's all about those little things, isn't it? You just don't see guys choking up anymore the way that you used to. Anyway, the Phillies offense eventually did wake up. Mike Schmidt missed a home run by about 4 feet here in the bottom of the 4th.
Ball is well hit to the right side. Poole going back, going back, going back. Can't get it. Off the wall. Schmidt into second. Takes a turn. Holds there.
Luzinski then fought off this for a double, making up for his earlier mistake in the field.
In there for a base hit. Extra bases for Luzinski. Mike Schmidt comes in to score, and we're even at 1.
The Phillies then decided to bunt Luzinski over to third, which is something you would never see a team do in this situation today. But it worked. Gary Maddox got the base hit, and the Phillies got the 2-1 lead.
Ball is hit sharply to left field for a base hit. Greg Luzinski scores, and the Phillies lead.
So I know that small ball is not the most scientific way to play the game, but it's a lot more fun than watching guys strike out all the time. So with 2 out in the top of the 7th and down by a run, the Astros let Nolan Ryan hit for himself. Ryan wound up walking after working the count full.
And would just like to take a bite out of that rosin bag, then walk Ryan.
Ball is hit in the gap. Right fielder McBride can't get it. Goes to the wall. Here comes Ryan.
And then Terry Poole hit this one past Bake McBride, and Nolan Ryan scored all the way from first base, tying the game at 2. Now, Ryan wasn't exactly running the bases the right way, and his poor base running almost cost the Astros a tying run. And you've got to wonder why in the world the Astros decided to stick with him instead of, going to the bullpen.
Ryan and the double by Poole might have been something that is going to get him going.
The Phillies greeted Ryan with a single in the bottom of the 7th. Bob Boone then bunted this ball past everybody for a single.
Down the right side, gets it past Ryan. It's going to be a base hit. The shortstop has to come all the way over to make the play.
The Phillies bunted again, and Ryan had to go to first with it, and that was it for Nolan Ryan.
Right back to Ryan. No play at third, over to first. And the runners move.
The Astros walked Pete Rose intentionally to load the bases. But then left-handed reliever Joe Sambito struck out Bake McBride. And then the closer, Dave Smith, caught Mike Schmidt looking, keeping the score tied at 2. And there was still more drama to come, but personally I'll never get over the sight of seeing Nolan Ryan trying to run the bases carrying the tying run. I haven't said much about Joe Morgan yet, since he was kind of quiet until he hit this double in the top of the 8th. Jose Cruz hit this double to put the Astros up 3-2. But Greg Luzinski then got the single in the bottom of the 8th. Lonnie Smith, who was always an adventurer, came on as a pinch runner. The Phillies bunted Smith over to second. Then Gary Maddox hit this single, and Lonnie Smith barely scored from second base, tying the ballgame at 3. Now, Lonnie Smith might have been known for skating around on the turf a lot, but he was also a pretty good player. With 2 men on and only 1 out in the bottom of the 9th, Smith grinded out a 12-pitch at-bat back when grinding out at-bats like this was pretty unusual. Smith then got this single to load the bases, and you've really got to wonder why Bake McBride didn't try to score. But Manny Trio struck out.
You talked while he was in there. High pop up on the right side. It looks playable.
And Gary Maddox popped out to send the game into extra innings. And it just kept getting more intense from this point on. Terry Poole led off the top of the 10th with this single to right.
Sharply hit to the right side for a base hit. McBride cuts it off and Houston in the clutch. Then this man, Cabell, and Odd Howe now out of the game.
Enos Cabell wanted to bunt and almost bunted into disaster here. Pete Rose just barely missed catching the ball.
I thought he's going to get it.
So the next time somebody tells you that first base is an easy position, just show them that play.
No wonder he missed it. He's had no practice.
Cabell, who only had a single sacrifice bunt all season, got this one down. They then walked Joe Morgan intentionally, which made sense. But then Jose Cruz got this clutch base hit to put the Astros up by 1.
Here comes Terry Poole around third. The throw to the plate. Poole spins across and scores.
The Astros scored another when Rafael Landestoy outran an infield grounder. And then Dave Bergman crushed this ball for a triple, making it 7-3.
Here comes Cruz around third. Here comes Cedeno. And it's a triple for Bergman.
So I don't care who's at the plate, you just can't leave the ball up in the zone like that. Anyway, you would think that this game was basically over, but of course it wasn't. Larry Boa just managed to beat out this infield chopper in the bottom of the 10th, or so the umpire said. He was actually pretty clearly out. Bob Boone then walked, and suddenly the Phillies had something going. And then with 1 out and still 2 men on, up came that man again. Rose hit a double play ground ball but beat it out, and the Phillies scored a run on the air, making it 7-4.
Second baseman Landestoy over to Reynolds, one back to first, throws it in the seats.
Rookie pitcher Joaquin Andahar then walked Bake McBride, meaning that NL MVP Mike Schmidt, the next man up, represented the possible tying run. With a 3-0 count, Schmidt got a good pitch to hit but just missed it, and the series was tied 1-1. And that sent the series to Houston and to the Astrodome for 3 straight games. And now you have to understand that going to the Astrodome in 1980 was like going through a time warp. It was like going to the dead ball era. You see, in 1980, there were only 48 home runs hit in the Astrodome as opposed to like 163 in Atlanta. The composite slugging percentage was only .340 in the Astrodome, which was almost the lowest in the league and surprisingly low for a team that finished in first place. And although it wasn't the stingiest ballpark in the majors in terms of runs scored, you do have to wonder if the excellent Astros offense didn't have something to do with that. This also influenced the way that the teams played the 3 remaining games. So we've already seen a lot of small ball so far, which probably surprises you, but you haven't seen anything yet. Game 3 was really the game of blown chances. In the top of the 3rd with 1 out, Pete Rose did what he did so well to get the rally going. Bake McBride followed that with a hit-and-run single. And then a Joe Niekro knuckler got away, allowing McBride to move to second. Schmidt hit a grounder to third, and the Astros managed to get Rose at the plate. Well, you'll notice that Pete didn't come in like a football linebacker, or at least not this time around, not like in that All-Star game. So maybe he got a little bit soft in his old age.
Morgan on a 3-2 pitch. Hit sharply in the corner right side.
In the bottom of the 4th, Jose Cruz kept this ball fair for a triple with only 1 out.
Throws it in. Cruz going for 3. The ball gets loose and he's in. 2-2.
But Cesar Cedeno couldn't do anything more than this ground ball to shore. And Mike Schmidt made a great play here to end the inning. Apologies for the video issues. And that's the way that this one went. Both teams had little chances here and little chances there, but nobody after this could get a man as far as third base. And of course, this game went into extra innings. I told you, it was the dead ball era. With the bullpens tired after so many extra inning games down the stretch, you had interesting things like relief pitcher Tug McGraw leading off the top of the 10th inning. Necro, by the way, was still out there throwing his longest outing in almost 2 years. And lo and behold, McGraw wound up safe at first on an error. Pete Rose tried to bunt him to second, but McGraw was apparently out. I mean, you tell me, do you think Tug was out? I swear he was safe, but unfortunately the video signal error stops us from being able to see it clearly. Rose was still on first when Mike Schmidt ground out, ending the inning. Cabell got a base hit with 2 men out in the bottom of the 10th. But with Joe Morgan up there, Cabell tried to steal second in what I'm guessing was a hit and run play gone wrong. But like I told you, it was just that kind of series. I mean, every game was like this. Gary Maddox hit this double to right center in the top of the 11th with the score still 0-0. But Dave Smith struck out Dale Unser and the game went to the bottom of the 11th, still with no score. Joe Morgan then hit one extremely deep to right field, just missing a home run, and he managed to limp his way into third base despite his bad knee and his age. Denny Walling hit a sacrifice fly to left field, and Luzinski's throw landed in a different time zone. The Astros won 1-0 and took a 2-1 lead in the series. And all of that set the stage for Game 4, which I really believe is one of the top 5 greatest games in the entire history of baseball. Now, I can understand if you've never watched this game before, but man, if you haven't, you're really, really missing out. Despite all of Rose's heroics, the Phillies decided to have Lonnie Smith lead off in Game 4. Lonnie had hit leadoff about half the time during the regular season, but it was mostly Pete Rose hitting leadoff in September and down the stretch. Vern Rule was on the mound for the Astros. And he had a little bit of help from his fielders. Meanwhile, the Phillies had no choice but to start Steve Carlton in a win-or-go-home game. Unlike Nolan Ryan, Carlton actually started with only 3 days rest pretty frequently in 1980. In fact, most of his starts during the stretch were with only 3 days of rest. Now again, this isn't the sort of thing that you see a lot these days, but the Phillies really didn't have much of a chance. As you'll see soon, they were running out of bullpen options. Bake McBride hit a single to lead off the top of the 4th in a game that was scoreless, of course. But Phillies fans still must have been worried when this graphic flashed across the screen. Manny Trio got this base hit, but McBride was being held on first, preventing him from going to third. And then came one of the most controversial plays in the entire history of baseball. The Astros ran the ball over to second base for a potential triple play, all before time was called. And the ruling was that the ball was caught and both runners were doubled off the bases. So what would you do these days if you had this situation? Well, you would go to the replay cameras, right? Yeah, just wait until you see what the replay cameras show. From this angle, it looks like Rule caught the ball.
He caught it. Yes, he did. Caught it. There's the looper.
From this angle, it looks like he might have trapped it.
Or did he? Or did he? Now I don't know.
Since the argument had gone on for over 10 minutes by this point, ABC tried to blow up the image. And you just can't tell. I mean, it's impossible to tell.
I don't know.
For the first time that I'm aware of, baseball executives started getting on the phone to try to figure this one out. And in the end, it was ruled a double play with Bake McBride still at second base. And of course, this was like the impossible outcome. This is the outcome that makes no sense. Think of it this way. I mean, if the ball was trapped, then the batter's out and the runners move up to second and third. If the ball is caught, then the batter and the runners are all out because it's a triple play. So this was clearly a compromise, but it's a compromise that makes absolutely no sense, and this set the stage for a game that was filled with bizarre plays. I think the argument was that time had been called somewhere in here, probably when the Astros fielders started arguing with the umpire instead of paying attention to what was going on. The umpires didn't do themselves any favors by being indecisive and simply not making a decision for as long as humanly possible. You've also got to wonder why the Astros didn't just appeal by throwing to second. After all, McBride should have been on third since that's where he was when time was called. Larry Boa ground out to second to end the inning, which is likely the reason why you've never heard of this play. So, I mean, I don't know if there was something in the water or what. Every single one of the key National League games in 1980 had some crazy thing like this happening. And this game was already better than that bizarre Phillies game in Montreal, but there was a lot more to come.
Adds a little more exasperation to the Philly ball club. Hit well left field. Lonnie Smith.
Enos Cabell doubled over Lonnie Smith's head, and this is why Smith really shouldn't have been starting.
Cabell to second base, and he holds. An Eagle, the veteran, Joe Morgan.
Playing small ball, Morgan grounded to his former teammate, and Cabell moved over to third base. And Carlton looked like he was about to fall apart. Carlton walked Gary Woods, which brought up Art Howe with one out and runners on the corners. Howe hit a line drive to Lonnie Smith, who made the worst throw in the history of baseball. But Smith was somehow able to throw Woods out as he tried to advance to third. Okay, seriously, I'm telling you, this was the craziest game of all time. I mean, this was just the bottom of the fourth inning, and it's already totally bizarre, and it gets even crazier from here. So thankfully, ABC gave us this camera angle to show what happened. Smith had one of those throws that you pull out like when you're playing ball with your dog. But then he picks up the ball and makes an incredible throw to third to get the runner just in time. And so that was your run-of-the-mill sacrifice fly to left that results in the runner on first being thrown out at third. With one out in the bottom of the third, Luis Pujols rocketed this ball to center field and over the head of Gary Maddox, who was playing extremely shallow. Rafael Landestoi hit this single to left to make it 2-0 Houston, just barely getting the ball by Schmidt. So you've got to wonder if the Astros weren't trying to hit everything to left field after watching what Lonnie Smith was doing out there. I mean, that's what I would try to do. With runners on first and second and one out, Carlton walked Jose Cruz, Carlton's fifth walk of the game. And that was all for lefty. Luis Pujols hit this sacrifice fly to right field, which scored Houston's third run. But the Phillies dugout went crazy, saying that Gary Woods left third base early. And so the Phillies appealed to third base in dramatic fashion, and Woods was called out for leaving the bag too soon.
He's out! How about it?
You see, this is the reason why I hate the appeal play rules. I made a video on it like 2 years ago. Nobody in the stands had any idea even what was happening. And ABC did a really bad job of showing this since they didn't show the runner taking off from third at the time that the ball was caught. The Phillies bullpen walked 3 batters in the bottom of the 7th inning with 2 men out, showing just how much they missed having Carlton out there. But Rose made a good play on a bouncer to first, and the Phillies managed to get the third out.
Over to the pitcher, Reed steps on the bag, and they slam.
Now remember that this was still a 2-0 ball game, but this is 2 runs in the Astrodome in the dead ball era. It looks impossible to overcome. And the Phillies had not scored a single run since the bottom of the 10th inning in Game 2, which was 18 innings ago by this point. But as we've seen before, the Phillies started pecking away at Vern Rule. Lonnie Smith singled to put 2 on with nobody out in the top of the 8th. And Pete Rose hit this RBI single that somehow managed to evade everybody, and then the aggressive Phillies base running put 2 men in scoring position. I mean, just look at this great base running job by Lonnie Smith. Anyway, Mike Schmidt got a base hit on this infield single, and that tied the score at 2. Bake McBride struck out swinging for the first out. And then Manny Trio hit this to right that was apparently caught. Pete Rose scored from third to make it 3-2 Phillies. But then the Astros threw to first, and they ruled that Mike Schmidt didn't tag up at all. And Mike Schmidt couldn't believe it. Now, when you look at it from this angle, it's absolutely clear. Mike Schmidt didn't even come close to tagging up. But I guess that Schmidt thought that the ball was trapped in right field. And I just can't believe it. I mean, I really can't believe it. I've watched this game dozens of times, and I just can't believe what I'm seeing happen. I mean, you might see a guy thrown out on an appeal play for not tagging up once in like 100 games or so, sure. But how many times have you seen it happen twice in the same game? And the shoestring catch by Jeffrey Leonard and Wright was at least the third incredible shoestring catch in this game. I mean, this game was just incredible. It had everything. Rafael Landestoi worked a walk off of Warren Brewstar in the bottom of the ninth, down by a run, but it looks like that should have been a strike. Pitcher Joe Sambito, batting for himself, bunted Landestoi to second. And then Brewstar threw this ridiculous pitch, and Terry Poole drove in the tying run. With only one out, Enos Cabell hit this fly ball to right field, and it happened again. Poole was apparently running with the pitch. And the replay makes it absolutely clear what happened. I guess you live by the sword and you die by the sword. I have no words. I mean, it's just totally incredible. And so we went to extra innings for the third game in a row. Now, I told you, Game 4 of this series is like the best game ever. With one out in the top of the 10th, Pete Rose got a base hit, just as we've come to expect. Then, with 2 men out, Greg Luzinski hit a double. Rose had no business trying to score, but the throw home was bad, and Rose knocked out the catcher. When you watch this closely, you can see that Pete Rose didn't intend to slide at all. His goal was to knock the catcher out if possible. Well, I didn't mention this before, but the Astros were basically down to Bruce Bochy, who I think was their third-string catcher after Luis Pujols was injured earlier in the game. Alan Ashby had been out with an injury before the series started. But I mean, there's just too many things going on for me to mention everything. Anyway, Manny Trio hit a double to make it a 5-3 lead for the Phillies. And Tug McGraw shut the Astros down in the 10th, tying up the series at 2 games each. And somehow the Phillies were alive. Now, one of the things that most people forget about this series is that the Houston Astrodome was also being used at that time for University of Houston football games. It was their home stadium. And there was a football game, like a home game for the University of Houston, right after Game 4 ended. That was this game right here, Texas A&M at Houston. And it's amazing that it was listed as starting at 10:30 p.m. or later, which is an insane time for a college football game. Anyway, that game started at 11:33 p.m. and didn't end until almost 3 in the morning on Sunday. And yet there were almost 38,000 people in attendance, which is really remarkable. Houston won 17-13, though the game apparently was filled with mistakes. Anyway, I would love to hear from you if you're one of the few people who stayed up late to watch that one live. It wasn't on television, right? Remember, this is before the court rulings that broke the monopoly that ABC had over NCAA broadcasts. But if you went to see that one live, let me know. Anyway, they rearranged the Astrodome just in time for Game 5, which was another one of the best games I've ever seen. You know, usually a great series will end with a game that's not really that good, but not this time. The Astros, of course, put their $1 million man out there on the mound. The Phillies, meanwhile, started Marty Bystrom, who was a very obscure September call-up. Bystrom was so obscure that he didn't even get his own baseball card in 1981, despite starting Game 5 of the National League Championship Series. The 21-year-old kid had a 5-0 record with a good ERA, but that came in games against the Mets, Cardinals, and Cubs, 3 teams that were no good that year. Now, the reason that the Phillies did this is because of that somewhat strange bullpen management. Let me explain. Steve Carlton, of course, had just pitched Game 4 and couldn't come back. Larry Christensen had started Game 3 and he wasn't going to start on short rest. Now, in theory, the Phillies could have gone with Dick Ruthven, who had started Game 2. That would have been 3 days of rest. The other choice would have been Bob Walk, another rookie who had at least more regular season pitching experiences than Bystrom. But for whatever reason, instead of Walk, they decided to go with Bystrom. In fact, Walk, I believe, pitched Game 1 of the World Series. Now, it must have felt crazy for a rookie who had been up for about a full month to suddenly go toe-to-toe with freaking Nolan Ryan for the National League pennant. This is the difference. Nolan Ryan struck out Pete Rose looking to lead off the ballgame. Meanwhile, Bystrom gave up a leadoff single to Terry Poole.
Left field base hit. 2-2 to Jose Cruz.
Poole then scored when Cruz reached out and poked out this double, making it 1-0 Houston early on.
And Cruz goes into second.
Now, it's really, really risky to put a guy like Bystrom out there in a game like this. I mean, it looks to me when I watched him pitch that he was still pitching Double-A at Oklahoma City, especially early in this ballgame. But there was more drama to come. The Phillies managed to get runners on second and third with 2 outs in the top of the second after Larry Bowa hit this grounder back to Ryan, and he just got Bowa at first. Instead of walking Bob Boone to get to the pitcher with 2 men out, Ryan elected to pitch to him, which is a bizarre decision. The result was a high fastball hit up the middle for a base hit, putting the Phillies up 2-1. So, like I've said before, hindsight is 20/20, but it is bizarre to pitch to the number 8 hitter with first base open like that and the pitcher due up. And there were 2 men out as well. I mean, what were they thinking? Bystrom walked Luis Pujols in the bottom of the second with 1 out on a pitch that looked like a strike. Craig Reynolds then doubled to right field, and the Astros sent Pujols home. Pujols, who was clearly still injured, was thrown out by about a few inches. And you've really got to wonder why they tried to send him all the way from first. So maybe Pujols figured that since Nolan Ryan could do it, maybe he could do it too. But this was just a bad play all around, and it left this game tied. By this point in the game, Ryan was looking almost impossible to hit. And the Astros kept chipping away at Bystrom. In the bottom of the 5th, Pete Rose saved a base hit by making this incredible play at first, allowing Capel to go to second.
He's been doing that. This one looks like it's going into right field. Had it, Capel would have gone to third, but Rose...
You think Pete Rose was too old to be playing? This is incredible.
Pete gets the same break that Manny Trio had in the first inning, and great reaction by Rose.
Then Jose Cruz hit this grounder to second with 2 out. Rose made an incredible heads-up play to nab Cabell, who thought he could sneak in the tying run. This was another one of those absolutely bizarre plays that really would only happen in a series like this.
He is looking over. He costs himself extra territory, circling, and thus...
And I guess that Enos Cabell just didn't care that Denny Walling was due up next. Like so many other base running decisions in this series, this one really doesn't make that much sense, especially in hindsight. But it still took a real heads-up play from Pete Rose to make that play at the plate.
But that young man, Marty Bystrom, has stayed right there.
Greg Luzinski misplayed this Denny Walling line drive in left field, allowing him to reach first.
Walling to second base, and he turns.
Alan Ashby then came up to pinch hit for Luis Pujols and to replace him as catcher.
Wasn't able to hold on to the ball. Up the middle, that's a base hit. Here comes Maddox. Here comes
Ashby's base hit up the middle wound up scoring Walling with the tying run, but only just barely. Seriously, so many of these plays were so close that it's unbelievable. Anyway, all of that knocked Marty Bystrom out of the game, so much for that experiment. Nolan Ryan was still in there, getting out of the 7th after this nice-looking double play.
Morgan to first. 2 removed, and now we're ready. Christensen to Walling.
With 2 men out in the bottom of the 7th, Denny Walling came up again, this time with runners on first and second, and the Astros ahead 3-2. The next pitch was wild, and Jose Cruz came in to score, again just barely.
The 4th Philadelphia pitcher, Reed in to pitch to Howe, and Howe hits the ball to right center field.
Then Art Howe greeted new pitcher Ron Reed with a triple into the gap, and I wonder if he might have been able to go all the way around, given how the Phillies fielded this one.
And he'll hold there.
Well, and that set up one of the most dramatic moments in baseball postseason history. Nolan Ryan had a 5-2 lead in the top of the 8th and only needed to get 6 more outs.
Over 100 times in his career.
Larry Bowa led off the inning with a single.
That's a little looper, and it's past Reynolds. With
Bob Boone then swung at the first pitch, hitting it off of Ryan's glove for another infield single. And then Greg Gross bunted the first pitch to the left side and caught the defense napping. And that's the way that this series was. I mean, the Phillies just simply seized the initiative. They went after the first pitch every time, and it worked. And all of that brought up Pete Rose, of course, for one of the most incredible at-bats that I've ever seen. Rose was up there to try to force Ryan to work as hard as he could. Now you can see here how much Pete was choking up. He was fouling off anything that was even close. Larry Boa, meanwhile, kept trying to fake out Ryan at third. Pete apparently checked his swing here. This pitch made it a full count. Pete then swung at ball 4, a 99-mile-an-hour fastball, and was lucky to just get a piece of it. Pete knew how to hit Ryan, you see. And he got him to miss. Only the second walk Nolan Ryan gave up all game, but one that forced in a run. And Ryan's evening was over with the score 5-3 Astros. Now, that really was a key point in this game. I mean, the Astros went down to desperation mode, and they were wildly scrambling to find any pitchers that could still pitch. And their policy of having guys like Niekro constantly throwing complete games on little rest really came back to haunt them. Joe Sambito got Keith Moreland to force out a runner at second, but there was no double play and another run scored. Ken Forsch now came in, the man who started Game 1 an eternity ago. He struck out the National League MVP looking for the second out.
This is a good contact hitter.
But his next pitch to Del Unser wasn't very good, and this single scored the tying run. And then Manny Trio hit this triple into the left field corner, scoring 2 runs and making it a 7-5 lead. And you can see Pete Rose acting as the head cheerleader. So this really has to be one of the most incredible comebacks in postseason history. I mean, the Phillies were down. They were down and out, and yet they were able to peck away at Nolan Ryan once again. Remember, they did it in Game 2 as well. And that Pete Rose at-bat is the stuff of legend. But the Astros weren't done yet. Craig Reynolds got this broken bat single up the middle to lead off the bottom of the 8th against Tug McGraw. With 1 out, Terry Poole singled him to third. McGraw struck out Enos Cabell for the second out. But then Rafael Landestoi poked this one past Mike Schmidt and into left field for a base hit, making the score 7-6. Jose Cruz then got this little bloop single into center field to tie the ballgame at 7 once again. Now, like I said, this series is just absolutely insane. I mean, every time you turn around, the teams were tied again. And you got this feeling that they just wanted to play forever. The Phillies got out of that inning, but only just barely. Larry Boa then led off the top of the 9th with this bloop single. Cruz was probably playing him a little bit too deep. Bob Boone then bunted the runner over with the first pitch, more small ball.
Bergman picks it up.
Greg Gross then hit a grounder to the right side, sending Boa to third with a potential go-ahead run. Naturally, after all this fun, the Astros weren't interested in pitching to Pete Rose, especially since the pitcher's spot was right after him because of all of the double switches. And so George Vukovich was the pinch hitter and Tug McGraw was out of the game. Vukovich worked a full count but could only ground out weakly to shortstop. And of course, this game wound up going into extra innings. That's the 4th game in a row, and you simply didn't know what was going to happen. The Phillies put Dick Ruthven in there, the man who probably should have started this game. Meanwhile, Frank LaCourte was pitching for the Astros and managed to strike out Mike Schmidt to lead off the 10th. But Del Unser was a little bit more difficult. He hit this double that bounced right over Dave Bergman's glove.
Unser around second, the ball comes in. Smith going back to the bullpen for Houston. The ball is hit into center.
Manny Trio hit a sacrifice fly to move Unser to third.
Way back, one hands it deep. Runner tags, moves to third. Maddox is the batter. Gary swings.
And then Gary Maddox hit this double to center, giving the Phillies an 8-7 lead.
Run scores from third. Unser.
The Astros did get out of the inning, but the damage had been done. Well, and that brought us to the bottom of the 10th with the man on the mound who probably should have started this game, who was now throwing long relief, and with the Astros holding on to a prayer. Danny Heap went fishing, and Larry Boa took control and caught it for the first out. Terry Poole hit a fly ball to center, and the TV signal was lost for a moment. And then Enos Cabell went fishing himself, hitting this little looper to center field to end the series. And that's the way that this one ended, with a starting pitcher on the mound and long relief, and after the Phillies had mounted an incredible comeback against one of the best pitchers of all time who looked impossible to hit. Of course, the Phillies went on to win the World Series that year, but you probably knew that already. The Astros went to the expanded playoff in 1981, but lost in 5 games to, you guessed it, the Los Angeles Dodgers, and the last play was nothing short of bizarre. The Phillies, meanwhile, kept an aging club together and made it to the 1983 World Series, but lost in short order to Baltimore. And the next time the Astros had a seriously competitive team, things were a little bit different. Well, and there you have it. Of course, the game goes on, and yesterday's heroes are replaced by tomorrow's prospects, but I seriously doubt that there's ever going to be another series like the 1980 NLCS. There are moments here that are worth watching again and again. Even some of the worst plays were just amazing to watch. And some of the controversies were simply unforgettable. Anyway, if you haven't watched it yet, give it a try. I mean, who knows? Maybe you'll find yourself enjoying small ball.